A single radar ping, a burst of Soviet-era steel, and the U.S. Air Force's most secret jet went down. That night in 1999 changed how NATO thought about air dominance, and it still echoes in strategy rooms today. Welcome to Doctrine of War. Setting the stage, the 1999 air war nobody wanted to underestimate. By the spring of 1999, the skies over the Balkans had become a high-stakes proving ground. NATO launched Operation Allied Force to stop the humanitarian and political crisis in Kosovo. NATO had overwhelming air power, stealth fighters, precision munitions, AWACS surveillance, and a doctrine built on suppression of enemy air defenses, SAD. On paper, the math favored NATO. In practice, Serbia presented a different kind of problem. Serbia didn't have the world's most advanced missiles or the largest air force. What it had instead was a layered, patched-together air defense system. Legacy Soviet radars and launchers, mobile systems, anti-aircraft artillery, and, critically, experienced crews who knew their terrain intimately. Those factors combined created an asymmetric threat to NATO aircraft that was far more dangerous than raw numbers suggested. One moment from March 27, 1999 makes the point grimly clear. An F-117 Nighthawk, the iconic stealth fighter, was detected, tracked, and shot down over Serbian-held territory. That single event detonated a strategic shockwave. If a stealth jet could be lost, everything NATO assumed about protection, concealment, and risk suddenly required rethinking. Why did Serbia succeed at moments where many expected failure? A few key features: integration and improvisation. Rather than relying on a single, centralized network, Serbian forces mixed old and new systems, distributed command, and used decoys and emissions discipline to limit NATO's advantage. Terrain and concealment. Rolling hills, built-up areas, forests and towns provided natural masking for radars and launchers. Camouflage, underground sites, and movement at night made detection harder. Human factors. Trained, motivated operators who learned from prior conflicts and adapted their routines, rotating radars on and off, firing from unexpected positions, and using the enemy's tactics against them. Economy of force. Serbia didn't need to shoot down many aircraft to impose strategic costs. Even the risk of attrition changes how a high-tech coalition commits assets. Aviation is as much about psychology as hardware. NATO's pilots, planners, and politicians watched that downed F-117 and felt an immediate shift. Air supremacy was not a cheap, risk-free commodity. The presence of an effective, if imperfect, air defense network forced NATO to treat the theater with caution, accept higher risks, and invest more resources in SAD than anticipated. Pause here for a second. If you're finding this breakdown useful and want more, where we unpack the tactical tricks, electronic warfare lessons, and how this event reshaped procurement and doctrine, hit the like button and subscribe to Doctrine of War. We're doing deep, bite-sized analysis on conflict, doctrine, and history, and subscribing helps us keep those videos coming. Stay with us. Back to the story. What NATO already knew and feared was that modern air campaigns depend heavily on uninterrupted intelligence and suppression of air defenses. NATO's advantages were enormous: precision-guided munitions, AWACS, jammers, standoff weapons, and stealth. But each advantage has a counter. Serbia's air defenses forced NATO to reveal itself in order to silence threats, to expend specialized munitions, and to accept a non-trivial chance of loss when operating over a dense, hostile, well-prepared environment. Let's break the problem into the components that forced NATO to change its approach. Detection versus destruction, the cat and mouse of radar and stealth. Stealth reduces an aircraft's radar cross-section, but it doesn't make it invisible. Low-frequency radars, careful emissions control, and integrated sensor cues can sometimes put a track on a low-observable platform. The F-117 loss showed that with patience and a bit of luck, even modern stealth can be defeated when operators are disciplined and willing to accept trade-offs, like exposing a radar briefly to create a firing solution. That uncertainty forces NATO to allocate more SAD assets and to accept operational pauses that slow campaign tempo. Mobility and redundancy. Fixed, obvious SAM sites are easy targets if located. But Serbia used mobility and redundancy. Movable launchers, decoy positions, and overlapping coverage. Redundancy forces the attacker to expend more time and munitions to achieve certainty, and time is a luxury in political wars where pressure builds fast. Layered defense and low-cost counters. Artillery, man-portable air defense systems, manpads, and short-range guns still matter. They complicate close air support and low-altitude flights. NATO's fear wasn't only about high-end intercepts. It was about attrition of tactical assets and the political cost of losing aircrew and aircraft. command, control, and resilience. When a defense network is decentralized and communications are resilient or manually adaptable, killing a single node does not collapse the system. Serbia's C2 command and control practices emphasized local initiative and concealment, which means NATO couldn't simply decapitate the system without significant, risky effort. These features made the Serbian defenses more than the sum of their parts. For NATO planners watching from Brussels and the Pentagon, the real fear became not just the number of missiles but the operational friction they introduced: rerouted missions, increased electronic warfare requirements, higher sortie costs, and, very importantly, political sensitivity to losses. The political and tactical stakes. Why losses matter more than one plane. In modern coalition warfare, a single aircraft loss is rarely just a loss. It is a political event with strategic consequences. NATO in 1999 was a multinational alliance with different political appetites for risk. Each aircraft is tied to national narratives, pilot families, procurement politics, and media cycles. The more assets risked and lost, the quicker coalition unity phrase. From a tactical perspective, Serbia's air defenses forced several hard choices on NATO commanders. How many SAD sorties are enough? Suppressing air defenses requires multiple specialized sorties using suppression aircraft, jammers, and anti-radiation missiles. Each sortie uses scarce assets and reveals tactics. How aggressive can commanders be without risking unacceptable losses? Do you accept higher altitude operations that reduce threat but blunt accuracy? Striking from farther away protects aircraft but reduces the precision and responsiveness of strikes, and increases collateral effects, which in turn amplify political pressure. Do you expand the target set to include fixed air defense infrastructure at greater risk of escalation? Attacking certain targets risks wider retaliation, escalation, or political backlash, a key concern in limited conflicts. The downing of a top-tier stealth platform crystallized these concerns. NATO's response wasn't panic, it was methodical. More SAD modified routes, different platforms assigned to risky tasks, and a recalibration of acceptable loss rates. But every adjustment had cost and time implications for the campaign's tempo. There's an operational lesson here that still applies. Enemy defenses do not need to be perfect to be strategically effective. If a defender can change the attacker's calculus, make certain operations more expensive, slower, or riskier, they can shape the course of a campaign. That's the spine of asymmetric defense. Remember that doctrine is not static. NATO's response to 1999 shaped training, procurement, and tactics for years. It forced investments in electronic warfare, improved anti-radar tactics, new SEAD munitions, and a rethink about how stealth is used in contested airspaces. But those reactions also created new problems and blind spots, which we'll explore further. The tactical playbook Serbia used, the technical fixes NATO adopted, and why modern-day air planners still study Kosovo for lessons on risk, surprise, and the limits of technological superiority. Anatomy of the kill, how Serbia beat stealth. On March 27, 1999, a Yugoslav S-125, SA-3 battery under Colonel Zoltan Dani shot down an F-117 Nighthawk, the first verified kill of a stealth aircraft in combat. The aircraft, call sign Vega 31, was returning from a strike when it was engaged and hit. The pilot ejected and survived. This single event is the keystone for everything that followed. But the kill was not purely luck, it was methodical tradecraft married to opportunism. Here's the anatomy step by step. Sensor fusion of old and clever. Serbian operators used a low-frequency early warning radar, P-18 spoon rest, and similar, to detect anomalous returns at greater ranges than high-frequency fire control radars could on a stealth shape. Low-frequency systems don't provide precise targeting but can cue higher-frequency trackers to try short, disciplined illuminations. In Kosovo, the Serbs paired low-frequency detection with carefully timed fire control pulses, short, deliberate bursts to limit exposure but long enough to get a track. Emissions discipline and deception. Dani's crews famously turned radars on for brief intervals, sometimes as short as 15 to 20 seconds, then shut them down and moved. That practice denied NATO's anti-radiation missiles, which home in on continuous radar emissions, a clean kill opportunity and forced NATO to reveal search patterns and timing. The tactic also exploited predictable NATO flight corridors, terrain masking and mobility. Serbian batteries used valleys, forests, and decoy sites to complicate targeting and radar line of sight. Mobility meant that even when NATO struck identified sites, other launchers could still operate elsewhere, redundancy that increased the number of sorties and munitions NATO needed to achieve certainty. Human intelligence and pattern recognition. Perhaps the most underrated factor. Experienced crews learned NATO routing, timing, and electronic warfare patterns. They timed exposures to when an F-117 would be expected and accepted operational risk. The kill itself exploited knowledge of NATO's predictable use of certain ingress/egress routes and the tendency to use the same assets repeatedly. An economy of force psychological effect. Finally, the effect was more than material damage. The loss of a high-profile stealth aircraft forced NATO to re-evaluate sortie planning, route predictability, and acceptable risk, causing delays, more SAD missions, and a greater allocation of high-value resources. That cascade of responses amplified the strategic effect of a single missile. If you're finding this breakdown eye-opening and you want this setup and this tactical deconstruction to land with more viewers, please give Doctrine of War a like and hit subscribe. It helps the channel reach people who care about the real lessons behind headlines. Legacy, doctrine, tech, and modern implications. The tactical story explains the kill. The legacy explains why NATO, and every modern air power, still reads Kosovo in military schools. The shootdown provoked three broad responses: doctrinal recalibration, technical investment, and operational caution. First, doctrine and training changed. NATO doubled down on realistic SAD/dead suppression/destruction of enemy air defenses, exercises, cross-training EW operators with pilots, and emphasizing mission unpredictability. Predictable routes and timing became Friday night cautionary tales in planning rooms. The alliance also stressed decentralized, multi-domain coordination, integrating cyber, electronic attack, and kinetic assets to complicate defenders' decision cycles. The RAND after-action and allied assessments documented the need for better integration of ISR, jamming, and SEAD. Second, technology investments accelerated. NATO invested more in standoff weapons so aircraft could strike air defense nodes without breaching high-threat envelopes. Improved electronic warfare aircraft and pod jammers. Anti-radiation missile improvements and tactics. And sensors designed for low-frequency detection and multi-sensor fusion. The F-117 loss wasn't the sole driver, but it crystallized procurement priorities and justified larger EW budgets. Third, and crucially, operational humility grew. Planners internalized that technological superiority is layered, and defeat isn't binary. Stealth reduces probability of detection, it doesn't eliminate it. Good defenders, with patience and tradecraft, can create windows of vulnerability. NATO's experience in 1999 encouraged planners to assume adversaries will adapt creatively and to avoid over-reliance on any single technological edge. The CIA and other after-action reports emphasize caution in assuming invisibility. What about the bigger picture today? Modern air planners read Kosovo for three enduring lessons. Any asymmetric advantage invites asymmetric counters. When an attacker fields a decisive technology, defenders look for low-cost counters, from tactics to off-the-shelf sensors, that change the attacker's cost calculus. Human skill remains decisive. Sensors and missiles are tools. Operators and commanders create effects. Serbia's success was as much about the people running the systems as the equipment itself. Integration beats single platforms. The shootdown highlighted that combined sensor webs, multi-domain attack packages, and resilient C2 are what break defenses, not simply stealth versus radar. That's why modern doctrine emphasizes networks over silver bullet platforms. A few commonly asked questions get sharper answers because of Kosovo. Is stealth obsolete? No, but its use must be judicious, layered, and part of a broader campaign. Can low-tech systems threaten high-tech forces? Yes, if used intelligently. Does this mean high-end air power is irrelevant? Absolutely not. It means investments must balance platform capability with EW, ISR, mission design, and human training. To close, the 1999 shootdown didn't return parity to air defenses overnight. NATO retained overwhelming capabilities, but the event punctured complacency. It forced Western planners to remember a simple maxim: technology creates opportunity, but tactics and human judgment decide outcomes. That is why, decades later, NATO still studies Budanovci and Zoltan Dani's battery, not because the Serbs invented new missiles, but because they reminded the world that ingenuity, discipline, and a willingness to accept risk can alter outcomes in a single night. If you enjoyed this deep dive, subscribe to Doctrine of War for more sharp, source-backed analyses on military history and doctrine. Drop a comment. Which lesson surprised you most? The radar trick, emissions discipline, or the political fallout? We'll feature thoughtful replies in upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, And remember, doctrine is not theory alone, it's what happens when people, machines and decisions meet in the fog of war.